didn't realize that was me that was coming up when he was talking about that. I'm not very tall for this, so forgive me. But before I start, I actually have to ask you all to put on your best smiles, because my challenge from my digitally connected millennial marketing workforce was to take a selfie before I started. So please smile, because you might be in our selfie. And the other thing that I learned recently is I realized that all the selfies I'd taken had a very big jaw and chin. And David, I join you in being one of those older SME owners. And somebody said to me, I said, why do I look so horrible in these selfies? And a millennial said to me, you have to hold the phone up. So there's a tip for you if you didn't know. So let's going to see whether this is connected at the end there. If not, I'm going to ask you guys to say slide. So I'm going to say slide if you can start that process. So thank you very much for the introduction, Paul. It's great to be here and get connected with all of you. I mean, can I ask you, how many of you come to a networking, as SMEs, how many of you come to a networking event at least once a month to learn and meet other SMEs? At least once a month. Okay? How many of you go at least once every quarter? And how many of you are in your first connecting with SME session? Okay, interesting, great. So what's interesting for me about this session is the amount of information we get overloaded with as an SME. Whether it's emails, whether it's tweets, whether it's coming to networking sessions, whether it's listening to 6 or 7 speakers in a day, reading blogs, reading newspaper articles, trying to keep yourself up to date. We have an abundance of information. In fact, too much information. Slide. I'm going to keep looking. In fact, what we can manage is down here, information that we can consume, but what we get is off the scale. So how, as a business owner, do you actually pick the information that you should be looking at, the KPIs, the metrics, the data, what's useful, and how do you separate that from all the other stuff that comes in and fills up our brains? That's what I want to focus on, because although I might be very connected as a business, I went through about 3 or 4 years in my company that's now been, I think we're in our 21st year this year. I went through 3 or 4 years of being overloaded with KPIs, being overloaded with information, being bombarded with emails, and finding rather than it help me, it actually confused me. And I needed to separate out what I needed to look at. Slide. And you won't be able to read the data on here, but by the time I've explained that you won't be able to read the data, 20 million emails will have been sent. Okay? I think most of those have gone into my inbox. And you know, one of the first things I did about email was I just separated CC from to, which apparently somebody in the room will probably tell you how to do. They might be under 25 years old or maybe 5 years old, and they'll tell you how to do it. But I just separated the two. What do I need to respond to? And what is just for information? And I read it once a week. And it fundamentally changed the amount of things that come into my inbox. So that was my first thing. But secondly, how do I look at the right numbers? How do I look at the right metrics? Slide. And so what's key, sorry, I said that in a sentence, was I went back to the 1800s, okay? So we talk about latest connectivity, we talk about the internet, we talk about all these famous gurus, but let's go all the way back to John D. Rockefeller. If he were alive today, he'd actually be richer than Bill Gates and the late Steve Jobs in relation. He started Standard Oil, okay? And in the 1800s, he was able to get data from the Russian oil fields on how many barrels of oil were being pumped daily. He was proud that he had the most up-to-date telegraphic system, and he got that data on a daily basis to tell him exactly what was happening across the pond before we were able to perhaps fly there, before we were able to get there easily in one hop. And what was important about this, not was the fact that he was connected to what was going on with his business, but was that he got this information daily. And this is what I'd like to spend the majority of my time up here with you and get some interaction going. Why do we need a daily metric? Slide, please. This is typically what we do in business. We have a load of numbers that we look at once a month. We look at revenue, we look at gross margin, we're hopefully looking at profit in the positive, and we're looking at all of those things at the end of the month. And that's like driving a car, permanently looking in your rearview mirror. All you're seeing is the results of your actions. You're not actually seeing a forward view. We have headlights in a car for a reason. They shine beyond the front of a car. And what you need in your business is a handful of leading KPIs, leading metrics that tell you where you're going, not where you've been. Now, if you're looking at those leading metrics and you're only looking at them once a month, once a quarter, at the end of the year when you look at your budgets, then you're also not going to be very reactive to what's happening in the market. So I want to challenge you, every business in this room, no matter how diverse you are, to find what we call a daily metric. Slide, please. And why a daily metric? First of all, it takes 6 data points to see a trend. So if you're looking at a number weekly, how many weeks, this is a quick test to make sure that you're listening and you haven't frozen to death out there. If you're looking at a number weekly, how many weeks will it take to see a trend? 6 weeks. If you're looking at a number monthly, it's going to take you 6 months. The best businesses, and particularly SMEs, when sometimes money is tight, time is tight, resources, everything is tight, you need to be looking at it daily. So you see something every 6 days. Goldman Sachs actually look at numbers morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock at night. They look at trends twice a day. So they're actually seeing the numbers every 3.5 days. They're looking at trends. What are you looking at? So the first thing is you need to be looking at something daily. The second thing you need to be doing is using it like a health check. What are you looking at daily? Okay? If I go to the doctor, what's he going to test first? Before I say anything, what's he possibly going to look at? Blood pressure? Weight, maybe? Something? Temperature? He's got a handful of metrics that tell you healthy, unhealthy. Start off. What are your metrics that tell you your business is healthy or unhealthy daily? Okay. And also it's important for you to have a fresh perspective. Slide, please. We sometimes are looking at the numbers at the end of the month and we get bogged down into certain levels of detail. If you look at something daily, your perspective changes daily. So the majority of what I want to share as an entrepreneur is experiences. So I'm going to throw a slide up here. If I've got competitors in the room, I don't think it gives you too much of a clue as to our business, but I'm willing to share it. So let's put the slide up here now. This is what I look at daily, and the entire team looks at daily. Okay, great. So this is a dashboard that comes out from Salesforce.com, which all our sales people fill in. And this dashboard comes automatically straight out of the Salesforce numbers. What I'm looking at here is a handful of leading metrics. I'm going to explain it to you. If somebody wants to know more afterwards, I'm happy to share. I'm not looking at revenue because it's what's going to happen at the end of the month. I'm looking at number of digital leads, which is the top corner up there. I'm looking at the digital leads. How many have come through directly from using digital marketing, SEO, AdWords, etc., that have come through the system, and Salesforce tracks for that as immediately. On the other side, I'm actually looking at what have we sent out from a point of view of new contracts. In other words, this is really a leading indicator of what my invoices are going to be at the end of the month. Contract's gone out, that's a value, that's a financial number. Bottom corner, I'm looking at the number of opportunities that are live in the business right now. And an opportunity is something where we've probably going to proposal. We've had a meeting, it looks good, it's going to the next stage. And the number's different. Digital leads here, I think we're only the 3rd of April, was 3, opportunities was 14. That tells me that 11 pieces of business have either come from a referral or a repeat piece of business. They haven't come through the website or a new client. So immediately I can start looking at, there's a higher likelihood of that business closing than the brand new piece of business. At the bottom, I've actually got numbers on salespeople, what's the value of proposals that people have sent out. And in the middle, it tells me a leading indicator of how many hours business is booked for the month. We're a training company, so how many hours of training have been booked? The red line at the top here is kind of like, that's not good news, but it's only the third of the month. That's the target, and anything over the target is great news. Okay, anything in the green is good. Right? That gives me a health check leading of my business every day. What are your daily metrics? I'd like to try and get into some industry and challenges here about what could be a daily metric for you. So this is kind of like a bit more Q&A, but let's try and use, I think, what have we got in here? 300 people? 400 people? Something like that? High 200s, okay? We've got 200 business coaches in the room right now. So if you'd like 200 people to help find your critical number, your daily metric, let's see whether some of you measure something daily, or if you don't, what's your industry, and see if I can help. I want to step away from here because I'm too short to stand behind this. Okay? Who's got a daily metric in their business right now that they look at every single day?
Daily we monitor, one is the sales actually, collections, because I'm in distribution, and salesman visit plan, how many clients they have visited, how many prospective quotations are sent, and how many are converted into sales.
And how do the salespeople get that information to you? How connected are they?
Basically, it is paper-oriented, frankly.
Okay, all right. So great. So there's a great opportunity to take the numbers that you're getting, and if John D. Rockefeller can do it in the 1800s, hopefully you can get to the stage where somebody inputs some information and it's less paperwork and it's more connected. What other daily metrics do people have in the room? David? Great. Okay, great. So you're looking at a forward book meeting plan, daily number, and what would be your target, David, number of meetings a month? A day, sorry.
Yeah, I go daily 4, is my target.
Okay, great. So it's a great self-discipline if you're an entrepreneur. What's success going to be looked like? I got to have 4 meetings a day. How many days have I got booked in advance? Who has a company where they think they can't have a daily metric? Where they can't think of one right now? Not possible. Doesn't seem to work. Who in this room, how many of you actually work on a daily number? Okay, so maybe 5%, maybe 3% of the room actually have a daily number. Let me ask another question. What's getting in the way of having a daily number? What prevents you from looking or accessing a number daily? The gentleman here does a lot of paperwork, so that's pretty hard. What's getting in the way? Pardon? Habits. Okay, great, yep. Okay, so many of you have got multiple businesses. You need to have a different daily metric or a different number that comes from the business. Right, okay. So what's interesting is experts in this subject, I'm not one, we just use the methodology, say that you can normally find a health check, the pulse, the blood pressure, the weight, something that's leading for every single business. Some are easier than others. Some will be relatively easy, some will be hard to find. But with connectivity, the idea is that even if you have 10 salespeople, they should actually be able to send that number in to you once a day. How many meetings did I have today? You know, I planned 4, I had 3. I planned 6, I had 7 because I met somebody additional. Could be a very simple number that comes in from each salesperson. Retail industry, one of my clients, literally every store sends through kind of like their conversion number at the end of every day. And the CEO gets to see the daily metrics on his mobile phone. It's as simple as an SMS. Doesn't actually have to be a fancy database while you're, or a fancy system while you're small. But the power for me is having a daily metric, right? And not getting sucked into it's okay, it's weekly. Because you need to make decisions faster than your competitor. If you're looking at a number daily, once a week, you can look at that trend. Walmart, when it first started, used to meet with the team, ask for all the trends through the week, and the owner would sit with his senior management team on a Saturday morning when every other retailer was having a weekend. He would sit with his management team and look at the trended data from daily sales, what was selling, what wasn't selling. And then they would change the plan for next week based on the trended data. Wednesdays, there's more mums in the store, and so we should be putting on sale nappies and various other bits and pieces like that, because it actually moves faster. On Fridays, it tends to be, barbecue equipment is moving faster. And so they would change their displays, their promotions, their marketing, their sales based on daily data that came out, and they would do it every Saturday. So on Monday, their stores were ready. The competitors at the time were looking at trended data at the end of the month when all the managers came together. And they were changing their promotions and their marketing and their trends monthly. That's how a company like Walmart beats the competition when they're very, very small and grows big. So I ask you that question from your perspective. What's your daily number? Slide. You really need to get connected with it, though. So whilst you're small, write it on a piece of paper, put it in your pocket at the end of the day, validate, did you hit your numbers? As soon as you get any bigger, you need people to be sending that data in, even if it's an SMS, a WhatsApp, whatever else it might be. Everybody's connected here in the UAE. Even if you've got offices overseas, get them to send the number in to you. Make it simple. Make it one number. We have a few that come up, but make it one number. Then it's really easy for you guys to look at that. That's your health check. Okay? And finally, what's one of the things the lady mentioned over here, one of the things that gets in the way is habits. Slide. We work with a guy called Vern Harnish, and he talks about the Rockefeller habits from John D. Rockefeller. And his favorite saying is, discipline will set you free. Now, as entrepreneurs, the word discipline makes you feel a bit uncomfortable, because the whole idea of getting out of the corporate world was so that you didn't have to be disciplined and follow anybody else's rules. But if you can get disciplined on a handful of metrics, a handful of numbers, and get connected to them, you'll actually find that sets you free to go and be innovative. It sets you free to go after that next big opportunity, because you're comfortable that the health check of your business is okay. And maybe that's cash for you right now. You know how much cash is in the bank. Maybe it's sales leads. Maybe it's just making yourself be disciplined to go and do what you promised you'd do. Maybe it's looking at manufacturing output. Maybe it's productivity numbers. There's a whole load of KPIs. I didn't put this on a slide, but KPIinstitute.com is actually a website full of KPIs. Okay? And you can actually go and use theirs rather than have to make them up. They've got lots of industry KPIs and things like that so that you can actually use other people's. Great useful resource. But I'll just throw it out to any questions that you might have around daily metric and getting connected with your daily metric. I wanted to keep things very narrow. Any questions? Do you need to stand up and run around the room so you're warm? Question, who's cold?
If you're in sales, then I understand a daily KPI would work really well. But if you're a SME, considering this an SME event, and your company's got 10 employees, and you're a service provider.
Great.
If you're taking on big projects like with a 1-year duration, you'd only be looking at projects for the next year. In that case, to work on a daily KPI sounds very interesting. But if I definitely going to visit this website which you've given us, but if you could give me some idea now.
Great. What is your industry?
Green building service providers.
Green building service providers, okay? And you'd win a project and you have an entire project for a year.
Yeah, suppose
Okay.
it, yeah.
Okay. Do you continue to get new projects while you're working on that project, or you completely focus on one project at the moment?
Yeah, it would depend if the client is ready to wait for another year to get
Okay.
into it. But
Okay. On a project, do you have a project plan to deliver that project through the year? Okay. So how you're doing on your project plan is a daily metric.
project plans have their own timelines, so they meet on a regular basis with the client and internally as well. But it's not a fast process which you can measure daily.
Okay.
So it's definitely going to take some time to measure it.
Okay. It's interesting for me, there will be a productivity probably in your industry, a productivity measure that actually says that if you continue at this productivity rate, you'll hit the milestones of your project and you'll hit the end timeline of your project. And so that productivity measure or KPI would probably be the area that I would look at from a point of view of what people are doing in a project. You know, I've thrown sales numbers up here because we were talking about supercharge your sales, but you can have a customer service metric in there, you can have productivity, you might just have output, you might have people turn up to work on time, because the biggest measure for you is the fact that you haven't got enough staff in the office. What's your sick leave number might actually be a daily problem. Okay? Other questions, but great question. It really isn't just about sales, but sales are fantastic leading measures to let you know what's going on. By the way, I'm also an SME and I did start with one person, so I feel your pain when we show all these wonderful fancy things that you can't have necessarily when you have 10 people.
What we basically track as on today is the sales and the deliverables.
Right.
As she also mentioned, in our industry, deliverables happens over a period of time.
Yep.
So how do we measure that? I mean, we are already having KPIs in place for sales as well as deliveries.
Okay.
Do you think any room of improvements for daily?
Great. So what's interesting for me with salespeople is they're brilliant. Having come from a sales background, we're extraordinarily good at hey, do you know what? It's a 3 to 6 to 8 month sales cycle. Don't hassle me. I'm working on it. The pipeline's looking good. And you as a business owner are nervous saying, yeah, but you know, they aren't falling off, we aren't getting the deals coming through to a certain extent. A daily number makes your salespeople cringe. But rather than cringe at their activity weekly or monthly, which is possibly what you do right now, it makes them cringe daily. So I would be asking salespeople, particularly in a 6 to 8 month period, how many customers have you spoken to today? Okay? I want you to feel a little bit uncomfortable about productivity and activity daily. If I'm going to ask you daily, you're probably going to do something about it by day 3, 4, 5. If I constantly do this, you want to be answering, I spoke to 2, or I spoke to 1, or I spoke to 6, or David's benchmark of 4. So I'd be looking at activity that fills the pipeline for your salespeople, possibly. IBM did this when they wanted to turn around the business. They actually said, just give me a wave when I'm ready to stop, right now I think it is. The IBM looked at it and they said, if we want to win all of this business back, these top 100 customers are the customers we want to win back in our turnaround. And all they did was daily ask the sales force to say, what progress have you made on any one of these top 100 customers? Have you moved it forward a notch? Whether it's a phone call, a meeting, an email, a request, anything on those top 100 customers. So it was just a daily cringe that you have to look at. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers my questions. And actually, I have another question related to this only.
I think this might be the last question, but you get it.
Two of my employees actually, they left because, we started bothering them. Asking them to send an email report of every day what they are actually meeting, where they're going and stuff like that. They're saying, it is taking a lot of time. I'm sorry, I have to leave.
Okay, so first of all, make anything that people need to respond to simple. Don't make it a complex report. Salespeople don't like complex reports. Send me 2 numbers at the end of the day, your plan and what you actually did versus your plan. Secondly, if people leave because of pressure around numbers, thank you very much, Masalama. Okay, you only want A players to work in your business. A players do 2 things. They do what's expected of them, and they do them without management. Okay? If they are not doing those two things, then they're not A players, and you don't want them playing in your business. So pressure is good. Okay? They need to deliver. But make it simple so that it's not a painful process. Can I take one more, Paul? Sorry.
I like your idea about those metrics, but do you do it in accumulated situations? For examples, opportunities. I want to ask you here, when you're having opportunities of a phone call, trying to get more, what kind of an opportunity from more customers?
Okay.
I'm in service businesses, so I have to reach into customers, trying to sell my services to them. So the two questions, you put it in accumulated matrix, and the other question is, from your expertise, what's the revenue of out of 100 reached out customers? How many contracts can I win? Is it really 12% or less?
Okay, I can certainly answer the first question. The second question's a bit like how long's a piece of string. First question is you definitely want to see trended data. You don't want, so whether your salespeople send you one number, how many new opportunities there are, you want to track it ideally as a trend. Is my trend going up? And I like to look at last month versus this month when I do an analysis at the end of the month. But trended data is important, but by month. So accumulate every day. At the end of the month, start again fresh and accumulate, and then have a look at analysis month by month. With regards to what's your industry success rate, very hard. We're in a services industry. I would tend to say we're sitting at about a 35 to 40% closure ratio of the number of opportunities that we would do within a year. But that's not necessarily an industry standard. We have a 70% repeat rate. So you've got to look at the trended data in your industry. And unfortunately, and this is maybe one of the things that Paul can help us with as SMEs, there's very few benchmarks that we can look at, and because people are nervous to share their numbers. But perhaps there is opportunities within industries, within SMEs, to actually share in the service sector, what's the range of closure ratio that you get? How many meetings does it take to get a proposal? How many proposals does it take to make a sale? Might be interesting that we can all share, so actually we can see how we're doing against our competitive set without giving away your top secrets. I think that would be very interesting. But that's the rate we play at. You might be doing an awful lot better. If you are, please come and tell me how you do it later on. Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to leave a couple of connection things up there if you want to get connected with us on the final slide. I'm very happy to share information. Our team are a lot of millennials, and so they use all of these connected tools on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and everything, and I have to run to keep up. But hopefully with Etisalat's packages and business in a box, I might actually understand what they're all doing sometime soon. Thank you very much.
Hazel, thank you so much. Hazel, can I just say, before you step down fully from the stage, can I just say that whenever I hear you speak, I regard you to be the consummate professional. We're honoured to have you here today. Please, another round of applause for Hazel, please.
Thanks, Paul.